I remember that one dude that was just being totally ridiculous after BVS with you. I forgot the guy's name.
Who thinks that sissy shit is sissy and will never not be sissy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's like hardcore into like, fuck you pussy shit, Batman's fucking awesome, like these movies are genius.
Yeah. Oh, you just want jokes
for hope. You just want jokes. I'm like you don't.
Hector's the learner. By the way, thanks for correcting my pronunciation of.
Welcome.
When a white guy tries to say Guillermo del Toro.
That's pretty good.
No.
It's pretty good. You just have to go.
My girlfriend loves it when I do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that at the end.
Good man.
A little bumper.
I'm just actually broadcasting live.
Are you really?
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Hi, I'm Rich Finley.
I'm Hector Navarro.
And we're here to talk today about Old Greenskin.
Old Emerald Jaw.
Old Jolly Green Giant.
Old Incredible Avenger.
Ed Norton's less angry self.
The kids from the 70s' favorite pajama pants.
The zucchini hiding Hulk. The Incredible Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk.
So, Hector, you and I've wanted to do this for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And you would know that because you're one of the two of us. Mm-hmm. And we feel like The Incredible Hulk does not get quite enough love or introspection.
Not anymore. Certainly not anymore. It's no longer the 1970s or 80s.
Right.
When he was at the top of his game.
Right.
And
many people, and we were talking about this before, many people do not realize, especially if you're a little bit younger, mm-hmm. that Spidey and Hulk were the poster children.
Absolutely.
For Marvel.
Absolutely.
I mean, many images of Marvel out there were Spidey riding on Hulk's back.
From back in the day.
Right.
From back in the day. That's right.
The same way. My day, unfortunately.
The same way Batman and Superman were and still are the mascots for DC Comics. Back in the day, I think a little bit before Wolverine really hit his popularity in the 90s, in the 80s, 90s, mm-hmm. and then Wolverine became sort of the third top tier guy.
Right.
It was Spider-Man and then the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
And then you get to the 2000s, and then they started to shift the focus away from X-Men characters and more to the rest of the Avengers characters. In the mm-hmm. comic books is what they were. Take your first drink. In the comic books is when they started to first focus on bringing top tier talent to characters like Iron Man and Captain America and Thor, and kind of bringing those guys back. Who
they had ownership of cinematically.
Exactly, which is one of the reasons they did that for sure.
Right,
Hulk was always there.
So what we wanted to do today is we wanted to talk about the Hulk as a character. We wanted to talk about him in the comics. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Also in other forms of media, whether it be cartoons or television, and then end on the movies. That's a train. Mm-hmm. We couldn't strike the train. Mm-hmm. Sorry. But we wanted to talk about all the different ways that Hulk has been out there.
Yeah. And
then finish up with the cinematic universe and where we think Hulk is going based on the things that we know about Thor Ragnarok and Infinity Wars and all of that. So,
cool. For
those of you out there with a shot glass in front of you, I give you Hector Navarro.
So in the comics, and then you take your first shot. That's the joke.
People are going to be hammered watching this.
The Hulk was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and Stan Lee was on the beginning of a roll in the early 60s. Early 60s. It's 1961, and the first group of characters he creates that begins the Marvel Universe was the Fantastic Four. And I have here the Muppet Fantastic Four, which is different. But the Fantastic Four came out in 61, and he put on there a character.
And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the Thing the most popular character of the Fantastic Four, and that got his mind turning?
Easily. And the themes that he used for that character, Ben Grimm the Thing, he's just like, let's just go full on with it in this other character, the Incredible Hulk. And they went, let's go full Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with it. Let's do this monstrous
Frankenstein
character,
as well.
Frankenstein. They're coming out of the 50s, where in the 50s, Marvel was killing the game in the comic book world with their monster comics. You know, things like Gru and even Groot first appeared in the 50s.
Oh, wow, in the
Marvel
50s. I
Universe
did not
is
know
sort of
that.
like a one-off. You know, they would just have like science fiction monster comics where like, oh, it's Gru, the thing from another world, or
Now, was that
Monstro.
playing into a little bit of Tales to Astonish
Absolutely,
and that kind of thing?
absolutely. That whole vibe of the sci-fi, it was again the 50s, the atomic age that kind of went into
Right.
the 60s. So the Hulk came out, and everybody knows now the famous story that he was originally gray in his first appearance in that first issue, 1962.
Why was that, Hector?
Because that was what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee decided, to have the character gray. The problem was because he also only turned into the Hulk at night, so it's very much a werewolf type scenario.
And Stanley actually wanted to steer away from any kind of racial stereotypes whatsoever, so he wanted to choose a very neutral color that he felt people could identify with,
this
even
character-
though Bruce Banner was white.
The character was going to be hunted.
Exactly.
Interesting. He was hunted by the army from that first issue.
Yeah.
The army was the villain, which was kind of mind-blowing for a comic book
Especially
back
for
in
where we were in the
1962.
times, right.
Absolutely, absolutely. But a lot of Marvel comics were counterculture. All their characters were underground, and they were hated and feared by the public. Even the Fantastic Four, everybody loved them. But then
Spider-Man was...
Spider-Man. People were afraid of the X-Men, which came a year later in '63, which is a clear allegory for the civil rights movement that was happening in the '60s.
Sure.
So the Hulk was gray. He only turned into the Hulk at night.
Right.
But they didn't have the printing technology to not make that look like crap. So in the very next issue, they're like, let's go green because it pops and and we can see it. And yeah.
Yeah, and in the beginning, he wasn't necessarily the savage Hulk that is kind of the Hulk that I think a lot of people still think of to this day. He was just kind of a dick.
He had a personality.
Yeah.
And he would say, leave me alone.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he had a different, it was like a split personality thing. Like he wanted to just be left alone.
Now, was he
hated
doing
the army.
puny Banner at this point?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think he was like, the Hulk. He was himself, and he even had like he would like keep telling Rick Jones to piss off, basically. Like Rick Jones would be like, let me help you. He'd be like, you humans, and just kind of swat at them. But I don't think he was doing puny Banner. I don't think he had that self-hate. I don't think.
Okay.
A lot of that stuff and the concept of the gray Hulk was revisited in the 80s later,
Yes.
20 years later.
Mr. Fix-It,
Because a lot
all
of
that.
people would argue that, the original intention of the Hulk was for him to be gray, but it was only because of printing technology did he become the iconic green that he is.
Right.
So really, he should be gray, blah, 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 blah. But I think he should be green. I think it was fate that led the company to print him in green. And he only had 6 issues, and then he was canceled.
Right.
And he was brought back in Tales to Astonish, where he shared the comic book with Ant-Man or Giant Man and or maybe even Iron Man, if it was a Tales of Suspense.
Yes, it was.
type of thing.
And
Yeah.
he was tweaked a little bit. He was different when he came back. They weren't doing the transformations just at night, so he wasn't like a Wolfman character. Now, Bruce Banner losing control or becoming angry or having too much adrenaline became the driving force for
Right.
changing into the Hulk.
And we saw that in the first issue of The Avengers, which came out in 1963. That was Stan Lee saying, the DC Comics has the Justice League, and I was originally asked to create a superhero team, but we didn't have any characters, so I did the Fantastic Four. But now they're their own thing. So now really to compete with the Justice League,
Right.
we'll recruit Iron Man, who came out that same year in 63, Thor, who came out in 63, Hulk, who was a big character, and then Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they became the first Avengers. And he was in the first issue. He's being manipulated by Loki.
Right.
He was definitely green during the daytime. He went and hid as a clown in a circus at one point and painted
Oh my
himself
gosh,
as like
you're
a
right.
robot clown. And then by the end of the issue, he joined the team. He joined the Avengers because he wanted acceptance from humanity. And then in the very next issue, he left because nobody trusted him.
Right.
And they all talk crap about him behind his back. So he's like, I'm out of here. And then I think at the issue after that, he teamed up with Namor the Submariner to fight the Avengers.
And then I think the next one is when Cap came in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that was
number
it.
4.
And he became the leader of the Avengers. And Hulk really wasn't on the team until recently in years.
Yeah.
He was never an Avenger character other than that first issue. But he's still considered a founding member of the Avengers. So that's the Hulk in the comics in the 60s. He came back in 1966 with his series.
And that's issue 1?
That's issue 1. I think it was issue number 102 because they counted every issue in between then,
right.
where he was sharing the comic with somebody else as a Hulk comic. So then when they came back, they're like, well, the numbering will be 102, but this is the big premiere issue. And then he had a comic, for since then, basically. He had his own series since then. He went through a bunch of stuff in the 70s. He got pretty trippy dippy. He went through events like
We met Rocket Raccoon through the Incredible
in the
Hulk.
70s. That's
Yeah.
right. We met another character that we met in the 70s, in the late 70s, was the Wolverine.
I'm sorry.
Are you familiar with him?
The Wolverine.
The Wolverine.
Oh,
He's
that sounds like a really cool character.
Who fought the Hulk.
Little yellow guy.
Little yellow guy.
How dare you?
And
he just had jaundice.
And the comic book started to reflect a little bit more of the popularity of the show.
Yes.
So
well, we talked about it before. They had the banner, pardon the expression, at the bottom based on the sensational character from the TV show.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that was that. That carried into the 80s, where you had writers like Peter David start his run.
Well, now hang on. Let's back up for a second and talk about the comics. So I got introduced to the Hulk through the TV show because I am a million years old, but watching the TV show made me interested in learning more about this character.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I could read stories about this character, and he's actually going to talk. So I couldn't believe it. So when I got in, it was around issue 240, 250, and shortly thereafter, Banner obtained the ability to control the Hulk. And so he had his own intelligence whenever he turned into the Hulk, which was really interesting. And after I caught up on a lot of back issues, because for a long time, I mean, it was about 3 years actually where he had his intelligence in the Hulk. And those comics were really spent with him doing a lot of heroic things as the Hulk, and making amends for a lot of the things that he had done, some of the fights that he had had with other heroes. It took a long time for people to trust Banner, that he wasn't going to lose control. There was a beautiful spread in issue, I believe it's 280, where he gets pardoned by the U.S. government for all the crimes that he had committed. So he actually got amnestied.
Yeah.
And you can see all of the heroes in the Marvel Universe is there to celebrate that moment. He was given gifts. He was given an honorary membership into the Avengers again. So there was all these things that happened. And then Hulk went off to Secret Wars, and then he came back. And obviously, when Marvel did Secret Wars was a 12-issue miniseries. And what they did was they had their characters disappear for 1 month. And then they came back the next month. So you had to follow the 12 issue of Secret Wars, but the characters came back during that second month. And they would make references to what happened during Secret Wars, but it was almost like nobody talks about that. It's kind of like if you and I talk about when we went to the screening of Batman v Superman. Like,
nobody talks about that.
We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about what happened there.
Where were you guys for 3 hours? No, we don't talk about
that.
Yeah.
No, we were on the battle world. So they did a very interesting thing during the run-up to issue 300 of the Hulk. So about the 12 issues before, we're on a comic book where you would normally have, they would have the Spider-Man insignia or that kind of thing right there in the top left-hand corner. What they did for the last 12 issues up to the 300th issue, and I don't know if you know this or not, but in the top left-hand corner, when the Hulk had Banner's intelligence, they made an icon of the Hulk holding two beakers, and he's in a suit.
Oh, cool.
He's in a suit with a lab coat, but he's the Hulk.
Yeah.
And showing that here's this, the Green Goliath.
Yeah.
But he's with beakers and showing that he's got his intelligence. And what they did once he came back from Secret Wars is the very first issue after that, you see in the top left-hand corner, his hand looks like it's trembling, and the beakers are starting to fall out of his hand.
Oh, no.
And then the next issue was they're falling a little further, and you see Banner's expression, or Banner, he's the Hulk, but he's maintaining Banner's intelligence. You see him over the course of 12 issues of just watching the top left-hand corner, him becoming more angry, and there's one where he's ripping the clothes off. And by issue 300, he is totally berserker, mindless. Not even Hulk smash, but mindless.
Mindless Hulk, yeah.
And it was, for a kid reading the comics at the time, it was heartbreaking because you feel Banner slipping away over those 12 issues. And they were showing you in the comic, I mean, you could see where this was going. And it was just a beautiful little thing that they did that I really loved, and it really connected with me. Yeah. So by the time they hit issue 300, Banner's intelligence was considered to be completely gone from the Hulk. So Banner is gone. So the Hulk is mindless now, and he actually could be capable of killing, whereas Banner's personality had
always kept him from doing that.
Exactly. Right. And that's what made him heroic. And so now that was gone, Marvel went the route of having Doctor Strange send Hulk off to the Crossroads world, where for, I think it was about another year, I think it was like 12 or 13 issues. And by the way, Nightmare had been the one that was stripping Banner's intelligence away from the Hulk behind the scenes, because he was having a lot of dreams and a lot of actual nightmares about it. So once Doctor Strange got wind of that, he sent Hulk off to the Crossroads world. Then that's when John Byrne did a very short run where Hulk comes back to Earth. Banner was actually still in there, his consciousness. And so now we're back to Hulk and Banner. Banner doesn't have control of the Hulk anymore. Right. And John Byrne did a run where he separated them. So now you had the Hulk is a separate entity and Bruce Banner is a separate entity. What Banner wanted to do, however, what Banner did not realize was his humanity was what kept the Hulk from being a savage killer. And so they went about recombining them again, and then that's when I think Peter David came in, and you could take it over from there.
And they did
just to catch us up.
He did a beloved run where he examined the split personality aspect of the Hulk even further. He had the Gray Hulk, going back to the Gray Hulk idea, and created an identity called Joe Fixit, who again, like we were saying in that first issue, wasn't mindless. He had a personality. He was snarky. He became a bouncer at a Las Vegas club, which is hilarious. It's really great. He had a girlfriend, Marlo Jones, for a little bit. Also wanted to point out, but even though he was only in the Avengers for one issue, in the 70s he became a founding member of the Defenders. Which was like this sort of interesting, funky underground
He will not
Avengers.
be on the Netflix series.
No,
don't
because the Defenders,
look for that.
It was him, it was Doctor Strange.
Valkyrie
eventually, but it was Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, and Namor the Submariner, and Hulk were the first four.
Did they sometimes bring in, why am I thinking they brought in Ghost Rider at some point?
They had Ghost Rider later, and I think that kind of turned into the Champions of LA, which is the LA-based superhero team with Black Widow, Ghost Rider, Iceman, Archangel. Angel. It's a little silly, but the Defenders, they had Valkyrie, they had Hellcat.
Hellcat,
who was in the Jessica Jones show, but
she was.
I've always felt like Hulk was more of a Defender-style character, which is just like a fringe superhero team, than he was an Avenger. Does that make sense? Now, because of the films, he's definitely an Avenger. That's what everybody thinks of him as.
Well, and you had a character in... I definitely feel like he was more accepted in the Defenders.
He was, because they were all weird.
And Strange was a character who really sought to understand him.
Yes,
and tried to.
I think that tied into how Strange sent him to the Crossroads.
Yes, it had to be him.
It had to be him. So Peter David had a great run.
Let's talk for a second. Was Peter David the one who brought in the aspect of Bruce being abused as a child?
I believe it was.
Okay,
it might have been John Byrne.
How did you feel about that?
It might have been John Byrne.
Because I have thoughts.
Yeah, you have thoughts?
Yeah.
My thoughts were that I think that it's fine. I think that a lot of Marvel characters have traumatic backgrounds, or at least things that have happened in their lives that have been really traumatic. I think that it's fine because you don't normally have superhero comic book characters that come from abusive households and abusive childhoods. At least for me, when that happened in the comic books, I think it was one of the first to do that.
Yes.
And I feel like now we don't accept a heroic character in movies or anything unless they're like an orphan, or unless you know what I mean. Like now,
right,
we don't, but that was.
It needs more dour.
Yeah. Now it's kind of that's what the mission statement is. But I think it was fine. I think that the way that they explored it was interesting. I haven't read too much of that old stuff. I know that they delved a little bit more into Bruce Banner's father, which is pretty interesting,
right.
And led into some of the psychology of Banner. And that's what is interesting to me, is that the comic books have always been about his psychology.
Yes.
And more than any other superhero comic book, which is really interesting. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first off, you're wrong. It was not interesting. No, I agree with you. And I think it's important, obviously it's important that all people be represented, right? And I think it's great that if someone had suffered from abuse, the different metaphors that the Incredible Hulk create are really, really interesting. Here's this unfortunate thing that happened to you that is not your fault, and now, since you've had that thing, there are consequences and there are repercussions, and there are things within you that you either have to try to come to understand or attempt to control. So I get that. I just felt, when I was reading it at the time, I was a kid, and I did not come from an abusive home. I very easily could have. It's nothing that I did necessarily. Kept my parents in line. But I felt like the Hulk was already a powerful metaphor for whatever your foibles may be or whatever challenges you may have in your own life.
That's really interesting.
That kind of thing. So
he's a very relatable character.
I think so.
Because of that, because everybody has something
that they wrestle with.
Something that they wrestle with. We were talking about the Ang Lee film, which we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But
careful. Don't go too far.
We won't go too far. But even I think some of the father issues, some of that was explored in that movie.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people don't give that film credit for attempting, but maybe that's because it didn't quite nail it or stick the landing. But I think that that's interesting that Ang Lee saw the Hulk and was like, oh, this is something I want to have in my movie. This element.
I have thoughts on that.
I'm sure that you do.
We'll get to that.
And then in the 90s for a hot minute he was Professor Hulk for a little bit. He kind of became the sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger
did you like all that
hero.
merged stuff where there were like almost 4 personalities? They, Marvel kind of did a Death of Superman 4 of the Hulk.
There was Fix-It, there was Professor Hulk, there was like I think a Savage Hulk.
Wasn't there the merged Hulk? Didn't they all combine to come to one? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. They kind of cleaned house. They kind of cleaned everything up. But for a hot second, he was a guy that had a big gun, kind of like an Arnold type character. Which again, late '80s, early '90s, that was sort of in
That's
pop
fascinating
culture.
because that's the first person that they went to play the Incredible Hulk in the TV series.
Really?
Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was busy doing Conan.
I believe it.
But we'll get to that.
He was Mr. Universe.
Yes.
And then in the 90s, Hulk had some ups and downs. You get to the 2000s, the 90s and 2000s. Bruce Jones had an interesting run where he introduced a lot of elements of him back on the run from the government. He became Mr. Green communicating with a Mr. Blue, which was used in the Incredible Hulk film.
Yeah.
And there was some really cool stuff there. They brought back Betty Ross, and then she was killed.
They also turned Rick Jones into a Hulk for a while.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. That happened later with, the 2000s had a bunch of interesting stuff. With Planet Hulk was, I think, the big thing that a lot of people recently in comics latch onto. Yeah. Planet Hulk was this massive event in World War Hulk when he came back and was mad about it. But Planet Hulk, he went to space and fought aliens and became like a Russell Crowe in this gladiatorial type arena, which I'll be interested to get your thoughts on that too. I think that Hulk is a very entertaining character, and I haven't read too much of the Planet Hulk stuff. I've read World War Hulk. I think it's a cool idea, but for me, you asked me before we started talking about the comic books, what's my favorite run? I haven't given myself the pleasure of going back and diving into a bunch of old Hulk runs yet. I've done that with other characters, Spider-Man and different things. But I think that for me, the thing that really excited me about Hulk recently in comic books was probably Indestructible Hulk.
Okay.
This run right here. This is something that was written by Mark Waid.
Hey, it's right here.
It's right here. Mark Waid wrote this, and the art in the beginning story arc was by Leinil Francis Yu. And it's gorgeous. And the idea is he's Indestructible Hulk, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Bruce Banner kind of becomes this character who realizes I should use this as a superpower, and I should work with the authorities instead of running from them. Mm-hmm. And they're really going off of what the movies have been doing recently. Maria Hill is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And like he said in the Ed Norton movie, I can maybe be a bullet.
Maybe I can aim it.
If I'm a bullet, at least I can aim it at something. And that's what he's using when he's asking S.H.I.E.L.D. to aim him to go take out some problems. And meanwhile, he's working on other things because now he's getting insane amounts of funding from S.H.I.E.L.D. to be able to do his science stuff. He's like, he goes, fine, you can use the Hulk when you need him, but in the meantime, just pay for my stuff. And I'll try to solve a bunch of problems. I will solve problems because he's such a brilliant guy.
Now, I was out of the comics by this point when this came in.
Yep.
Because I just kind of naturally gravitated to the cinematic universes and things of that nature. But was he doing that behind S.H.I.E.L.D.'s back, trying to find a cure for himself? Did they know that?
I think so. I don't know if they knew that, but he was doing other stuff, not behind their backs, but in front of their faces, because he recruited a science team. He recruited, these really young, not all of them young, but like these interesting group of scientists that had different specialties, and he wanted to, and he recruited them for different reasons. One of them was dying of cancer, and nobody else knew, but Bruce Banner knew, and so there was this little interesting dynamic there. But he was solving problems like trying to fix things like world hunger and these huge, massive problems that S.H.I.E.L.D. should be solving, and they should have a big brain like Banner on their payroll. So that's what his thinking was.
Okay.
And at one point he interacted with Thor and went over to Asgard, but back in time Thor, and it was drawn by Walt Simonson, which was great. It was a great little piece. And he teamed up with Daredevil. It was great. I can't recall if he was trying to cure himself the entire time, because I believe that Banner's whole notion was that he's come to sort of accept that side of him, and he's using it in a positive
For
way.
good.
For good.
Right.
For good. So it's interesting to me. We can talk about this a little bit when we talk about the movie stuff because I think it's
definitely
relevant.
want to get to that.
But you also asked me an interesting question, Rich, which was earlier before we started.
I did?
You did. You said,
did.
"Do you remember your first encounter with the Hulk?
Oh,
your first
yeah.
memory of how you got introduced to the character?"
Right.
And the answer to that question is honestly, I do not. And
You don't
think
remember?
that I don't remember.
He just was there.
He was always there.
Wow.
And I think that is a testament to how iconic the character is, how kind of powerful he is. When I was coming up, I was born in the late 80s, and in the 90s I had cartoon shows. I know, you're very, very old. And I had cartoon shows in the 90s. There was an Incredible Hulk cartoon show, but even before that show, which I think came out in
You're talking about the one
1996.
that came on after Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends?
No, that was I don't know if that was.
Oh, you're talking about the one with he and
90s.
She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You're a sperm.
Yeah.
Right.
I was a tiny sperm
You were
idea.
you were a thought.
In the 80s, but even before then, my first introduction to Marvel Comics in general, I believe, was reruns of the Hanna-Barbera Fantastic Four show that they would air on like Cartoon Network. The 60s
wow,
show,
okay, yeah.
the old school Hanna-Barbera thing.
Now, are we talking about Marvel superheroes?
I think it was just Fantastic Four.
like the Doc, Bruce Banner?
Not that. Not even
that
that.
one?
The Hanna-Barbera Fantastic Four, because the Doc.
Are you talking about with Herbie? You're not talking about with Herbie. You're talking about where they had actual
it had the Human
Johnny.
Torch. It had
Okay.
Johnny. And it had the stretch sound effects that were the same as Gleep and Gloop.
Oh.
And it was a tiny little run. And Galactus was all like blue and green instead of purple. Anyway,
Okay.
I think when I was before words, watched this cartoon.
Okay.
And my dad said something like, I used to watch that when I was a kid. And that was my introduction to the world. And I went, ooh, I want to connect with my father. Let me get
that's
into
great.
comics. And then like after a while, I learned everything about the Fantastic Four. I would watch the Spider-Man cartoon show, the animated series in the 90s, which I think started in 94, I want to say. So I was like maybe 7 or something. When that started, I learned everything about Spider-Man, and you just knew that he knew all of the characters.
Because Spider-Man's your guy.
He's my guy.
Yeah.
He's my guy. And I knew that Spider-Man knew all these characters, including the Fantastic Four, including the Hulk, including the Avengers, everybody, Blade, everybody.
Yeah.
I learned through Spider-Man.
Okay.
That show was very good at introducing characters in one episode just to sell a toy, because I'd be like, oh, that's who Doctor Strange
Did they
is.
ever
Oh,
bring
that's who
Hulk
Daredevil is.
into that series?
I don't think so.
Because I remember keeping my pulse on the cartoons and stuff like that,
I don't
even
think
though
they
I
did.
was getting older.
But he went and got his own show for like a season, and
Yeah.
it wasn't very good. But even before, I would point to my dad and be like, "Look, that character knows the Fantastic Four," and he'd be like, "I don't care." I
And
like
you
sports."
point at me when you say, I point to my dad.
Look, now I'm pointing at comic book characters,
know.
but the Hulk was always there. I don't remember seeing reruns of the show. I don't
Okay.
remember seeing.
Yeah, because Sci-Fi picked it up. I mean, you would have been a
Yeah.
kid
Yeah.
when Sci-Fi finally picked it up and started showing it. And when that happened, I mean, I remember, I think it was like
Yeah.
18 or something like that
Yeah.
when Sci-Fi picked it up. And I mean, my day was made because I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, 5 days a week? I'm going to
Yeah.
get to watch the show? Holy crap.
This is before
I couldn't believe it.
DVDs. This is before any sort of on-demand service, so you had to wait for a channel to rerun a thing.
Okay, you're
Yep.
a dick.
I remember that.
You're a dick.
Look, I'm still impressed at how much Simpsons I know, considering that I watched all of the Simpsons before
Sure.
any DVDs.
It started
or,
when you were
know.
3.
It
Oh
did,
no,
it did.
probably more than that now. More
Yeah.
than 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So I don't remember like my first thing of the Hulk, but I just knew he was always there.
yeah, for me it was the TV show.
1978.
Yeah, so I was a little guy. I was like 3.
Yeah.
So I was a big fan. I remember growing up. We had a couch and it had a wooden frame. So it had the couch cushions in it that are normal, but we had a wooden frame and it was lifted off the ground, probably about this much. And whenever David Banner would turn into the Hulk, I would hide under the couch because I was afraid. Even though I knew he was going to take care of the bad guys, I was always worried that I would screw up and make eye contact and he would like crawl through the screen.
That's powerful.
Because he's wrecking shit in the
He's
show,
scary.
you know.
You watch it now and it's
Yeah.
tame, and it is.
Oh,
a,
it's
it's
so,
a,
and
it's
it's
a family
so.
show.
In some ways, it's so lame.
It's a family
to watch
show,
it now.
but
Yeah.
he was terrifying, and so
Totally.
many people had that same experience watching the show. that
Well,
how
and
scary
you
he
had
was.
your, it was the experience of you watched Banner's Fear about it, and so you would come to understand. This is something to be feared. So let's go from there a little bit, and let's dovetail into the TV show.
Yeah.
So, and there, by the way, real quick, to touch on the cartoons. So you mentioned it. Hulk actually hasn't had a ton of cartoons in recent years because of the success of the Avengers. He was in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which great incarnation of the Hulk there.
Great Hulk.
Loved it very much. I was not as keen on Hulk Agents of Smash.
Terrible show.
Because
So bad.
okay, sure.
I'll say it's terrible. It was
Eliza
really bad.
Dushku was a voice,
That's
so
true.
it gets
voice talent's
points.
great.
It gets points
Seth
for that.
Green was a voice. He played Rick Jones or the Abomination
Okay.
A-Bomb.
Okay.
He's a great
Yeah,
cast.
did
It was
not
a
know
great
that.
cast.
But I think once we get too hulky, then it takes away the specialness of the Hulk.
And it's a fine line. I know we're talking about superheroes and this is all for children.
Right.
But it's a fine line between doing something that is for kids and doing something that can be also seen by kids. And what I mean by that is you talk about animated shows, you talk about cartoon shows, especially around superheroes and comic books, and the top of the list is Batman the Animated Series. That was a show made by adults that was smart, it was well written, it had good drama, happened to also star Batman and could be seen by kids.
And it lived up on other levels where it's
Yes.
like, if you're a kid, you can appreciate it.
Yes.
If you're an adult, wow, there's no way that a child is going to get this or that reference or that inference.
And I think that Marvel's best show up to this point is probably either Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes or the 2 seasons of The Spectacular Spider-Man. They're just made by great talent. They're made by really, really talented writers and producers and directors.
Yeah.
And so that the show is of a higher quality. And Hulk Agents of Smash is definitely like, we're making this for kids. This is going to be entertaining for kids. And once you have that mentality, the same as I think Avengers Assemble, which is the new Avengers show, or Ultimate Spider-Man.
No idea why they went over
that. Because they went to Disney. All of the rights went over to Disney. So Disney's like, we'll make the cartoons, but they're making them too much for kids, I think, which is a bummer. So yeah, Hulk hasn't had a great, but I think that the best representation of Hulk, maybe in all of media, might be this show.
The TV show?
Honestly.
Really?
I mean,
I love the show.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could sign off on that.
I think that it's
let's just talk about the show.
Let's talk about the show.
So let me intro the show.
You got it.
So Ken Johnson, who created the Bionic Woman, so he was the show creator, the writer, director. They approached him with a bevy of Marvel characters. And they said, Universal and CBS came to him and said, we own all these characters. We can do a show of any of these characters. Do you want to do any of them? And he did not want to do any of them. But at the time, I guess he was reading Les Miserables, and he got the idea of taking the Incredible Hulk and making it like The Fugitive, and taking that character of Bruce Banner, wait for it, I'll get there, and turning that aspect into a weekly show. So he was on board with doing that, but he was going to make a lot of changes to the character that comic book readers were not familiar with. So the first thing that he did was he went to Stan Lee and he said, well, we're going to do the show. We're going to make the Incredible Hulk for television. We need to change the color of the Hulk. And Stan Lee was, he couldn't understand why that would happen. And he said to Ken Johnson, well, what do you want to change it to? Thinking maybe he'll say gray, something like that, which might be interesting. Ken Johnson wanted to make the Incredible Hulk of the TV series red.
Why?
Funny enough, because Ken Johnson's attitude was red is a human color. We can get red in the face. We can get frustrated. Red is the color of anger.
Sure, passion, love.
Right. So love, everything. So his idea was, let's make the Hulk red. It's less of a leap to go to green, that kind of thing. And so he went to Stan Lee, and Stan Lee apparently still had enough control over the character.
Pull.
Right, to be, well, I mean, that's another way to say control, pull, sure. We're not arguing.
Enough sway.
Right. But Stan said, which I'm sure, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was, no, you can't make the Hulk red. The Hulk is green because of gamma rays, which have no color to them whatsoever. They're too powerful to register color, actually. But he fought, no, the Hulk stays green.
Yeah.
And so they kept the Hulk green, which Ken Johnson was not happy about that. But one thing that he was happy about that is a professional level segue right there, just in case you were curious.
Yeah.
One thing he was really happy about was the casting of Bill Bixby for his Banner And I will say his Banner because now we will get into the fact that it was not going to be Bruce Banner, was it, Hector?
No, his name's David for no reason. Except there was a reason. And
There's
real
all
awful.
kinds of reasons.
It's real dumb.
Well, let's get into them. Okay, first off, the corporate reason given was that Ken Johnson did not like alliteration.
Yeah.
He did not like Lois Lane,
Too comic booky.
Peter Parker,
Clark Kent.
yeah, Bruce Banner.
Matt
And
Murdock.
so he wanted to change the name. So they changed the name to David Banner because Ken Johnson's son name was Banner. Was not Banner, I'm sorry, was David. Banner would have been weird. But no, it was David.
So
David
question
Johnson
for you.
was,
I think since then, I think that Bruce Banner, canonically in comic books, his middle name is now David.
Yes.
Did that happen after
and
the show?
and they made his father David.
Yep.
Kind of as a wink and a nod to the show. But really what happened, and the story goes, that Stan Lee was told by CBS executives that they did not want to use the name Bruce because it sounds too homosexual. Which, I remind you, probably the character that all people in comic book lore think is the biggest badass on the face of the planet is named Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
So.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Hulk, but yeah, also
No, I was
Batman.
talking about Bruce Wayne.
Also
He'll
Batman.
kill people too.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, he will. He will.
Both of these guys will kill people straight up,
Totally.
but not each other. If Hulk throws a
Bruce
car
Wayne
at
is the one we
Batman-
really need to worry about.
I know, he's the scary one.
He is the killer.
He's unhinged.
Yeah.
But Banner, he can be controlled sometimes. As
Yeah.
long as there's a Black Widow nearby to touch his palm,
Nice.
then he can calm down and then he's good to go.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Thank
right?
you for that.
It's called the lullaby.
Sun's
that,
getting mighty low.
So that was the show. And like I told you earlier.
So we went and got
Yeah.
an unbelievable actor
Bixby.
in Bill Bixby, who at the time was a Golden Globe winner for The Courtship of Eddie's Father. People loved Bill Bixby, and this was at the time. This was an incredible get for a show called The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And as you have recently discovered, which I find amazing that you just recently discovered the show.
It wasn't around when I was growing up.
No, I get it.
It wasn't around, but I was telling Rich that I didn't experience the Incredible Hulk show until a couple years ago, and I was thinking I wasn't going to like it. I was thinking it's going to be too dated. It's going to be hokey. It's I've experienced
there are no cell
too much.
phones.
Exactly. I'm like, it's 70s. This is the thing that people had to settle for. People being comic book fans. Back in the 70s, this is what they had. This is all there was, even before the big movies, or only after the first Superman film. So it's just compromise. I thought it was going to be compromise, and I started watching the show, and I saw the first 2 seasons and I absolutely fell in love with Bill Bixby. And I went, this is a performance that is so underrated because he brings so much to it, and it's so serious, and it's so earnest and real, and it's never like tongue in cheek, and it's never like above it all. Like I'm too good for this comic book crap. Like he doesn't even. He has fun only when Bruce is allowed to make a human connection, but he doesn't. He just there's just so much seriousness in the role.
Yes.
And I think that you were saying earlier that the fact that Bruce Banner is so afraid of the Hulk, that totally buys into when we actually see Lou Ferrigno in green paint. We're kind of like, oh, it's not that scary. But Bill Bixby said it.
He
this is
sold
terrifying.
us on
He
how
sold us
dangerous
how
this
dangerous
is.
it is. He's going to kill everybody, other than just throw a stuffed bear. Like it's really really scary. But it's so much fun. The show is
absolutely.
great.
And what they would do every week is every Hulk episode was one of 2 things. David Banner was always on the run, so it was like The Fugitive. So he was always in a different town and going by some name like David Benson.
Yeah.
Could not get away from the B.
David Bennett.
Yeah. And actually, I think they use that in The Incredible Hulk when he sends the necklace back to Betty. I think he signs it David B.
David B.
Yeah, so there was the little nod, the little David nod there. Or maybe Bruce Banner in the movie thought it sounded too homosexual to send it. I doubt it, though. I doubt it. So there were 2 kinds of episodes. One episode would be David, and we'll call him David because it's a TV show now. David was on the search for a cure.
Yeah.
So he would show up in a town, and there might be a noted physicist there who has done some kind of research on gamma radiation or that kind of thing.
Specialist. Or
Exactly.
something. Yeah.
Or just on like anger controls or things like that. And he would be seeking this person out, trying to find a way to control the raging spirit that dwells within him. That's a quote.
Bum, 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 bum,
Yeah.
bum.
By the way, the opening title card for the pilot of The Incredible Hulk is no. I'm talking about the opening line. It's text from the pilot episode. It says, "Within each of us, oftentimes lies a raging beast," and that. From the pilot episode, that very first frame lets you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's not a super what at the time was considered a negative, comic booky, kind of hokey, kind of like, quite frankly, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but the Amazing Spider-Man of that time back in the 70s, that live action, you can skip it.
Yeah,
you can skip it. You love Spidey, but you can skip it. But this one had a ton of pathos to it.
Yeah.
So the 2 episodes would be Banner is seeking someone who can maybe help him, or what they would do oftentimes was David is already entrenched in a new community. He's working at a restaurant. He's a waiter. He's a cook. He's a mechanic. He's embedded himself somewhere that he finds safe. And he's helping the people in his life. And even though he tries to keep himself distanced from people because he's afraid if you get close to someone, if he gets close to someone, he could hurt them.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. But even though he tries to keep himself away from them, David Banner cares about people so much and he loves people so much that he cannot help but become entrenched in their lives. And the show did a really excellent job of showing how the Hulk was almost a metaphor for what was going on in the lives of the people in the show. Like people in the show would be battling alcoholism, or they would be battling some bully. Like somebody might, I don't know, own a restaurant and they're getting shakedown for money from local mobsters or whatever. So the show was really great at kind of that underdog mentality, even though here's the biggest guy in the world who can kick everybody's butt, but they did a really nice job of kind of establishing the show in that way. And there are certain standout episodes of the Hulk. If you don't know the TV series and you want to look it up, I would definitely recommend the pilot. The pilot, it's a 2-episode opener. And the pilot is interesting because, I don't know, did you ever see the pilot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
saw the pilot.
So the pilot is really interesting. The pilot is a little bit different David Banner than what we get for the rest of the series. He's a little shorter. He's a little more curt. He's a little more
confident.
Yes, definitely more arrogant, I would say.
Arrogant,
in what he's trying to do. Now that's because the pilot started with the conceit that David Banner had a wife and they were in a car accident and he could not free her from the accident and the car went up in flames and she died. And so Banner was seeking a way to find that thing that people tap into sometimes when there's a kid under a car. Exactly. And you hear a story about a grandmother lifting a car or whatever. And so he seeks to find this out. Through research, he finds out that gamma radiation at that time when those things have occurred just happened to be going on. So then he tries to test himself with gamma radiation. He makes a mistake. There's a miscalculation, and he bombards his body with gamma radiation. And that's why whenever he gets angry or a lot of adrenaline or that kind of thing, he turns into the Hulk. So that was
pretty great.
Yeah, that was the conceit of the TV show. And standout episodes, I would say, definitely watch the pilot. Definitely watch the 2-episode Death in the Family. That is Banner going back home. So we see relatives of his, and they try to keep him there with him, and he tells them, and it's a beautiful scene, he tells them, I can't stay here. You're in danger if I stay here. I need to go. You're in danger if I stay here, not even from what I have within me, but
from other
people are coming.
Yeah.
People will come and find me, and they will hunt me down, and it will be bad. And so I have to go. And so that was kind of a running theme throughout the show, because every episode of The Incredible Hulk ended with David Banner on the side of the road hitchhiking to the Lonely Man music, which, if you do not know the Lonely Man music, first off, he's singing it, but second off, you should look it up. It is some of the most perfect music for that tone and for that mood of
so sad.
Absolutely, so sad, and that's the point.
Also composed by, I forget the guy's first name, Harnell, whose son
John
Harnell, whose son Jess Harnell was the voice of Wacko in the Animaniacs and is a prominent voice actor to this day.
Oh wow! Okay.
So his father composed that great piece, that little piano.
Yeah,
great.
I mean, you play it for men of a certain age in a crowded shopping mall, and we will all
and you'll get up and leave and start hitchhiking. You'll leave and just be like, I need to go. I can't stay here. It's not
totally
safe.
will.
The show was so great. I also think that I think it was a 2-parter episode, or maybe it was just like a season opener, I forget which season, where
season 2.
David was married.
Yeah.
That was season 2.
Season
he had a new wife.
Yeah.
And you said that 2-parter and the pilot were released internationally in theaters?
Yes. Universal released the pilot for The Incredible Hulk, the 2-episode pilot, the TV movie,
Yeah.
basically. Released it overseas because we Americans got it for free.
Yeah.
And it was the #1 movie in Europe. And then the next season, they had a 2-episode opener called Married. Where David Banner travels to Hawaii to find a noted physicist there, played by Mariette Hartley, who was an amazing actress of her time. The fact that they got her to do this role was amazing, and she won the Emmy for Most Outstanding Actress for that 2-episode of Married. Okay, and Married did something very interesting. Was they were able to bring together David Banner and the Hulk in the same frame. Because Mariette Hartley's character was trying to help David conquer the Hulk, so she would hypnotize him, and he would go into his dreams, and he would see the Hulk. And I remember being a kid, and they showed commercials of this, and you would see the Hulk in the desert in a cage grabbing at Banner, and you're like, what is happening? How are they going to show the two of them in the same frame? Of course, you found out that David Banner was dreaming, and he was kind of meeting the Hulk in his dream.
It was great.
But it's wonderful. I would tell people, watch Married, watch Death in the Family, which is a 2-parter. Watch The First, which is about someone who had the affliction before David Banner had it. So there's actually another Hulk, but this guy is... he's not a good person.
He was the first Hulk.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's not a good person. So when he turns into the Hulk, he's an evil version of the Hulk, and they fight each other. Not really fight each other. There's not much that they could do because of special effects. However, I do want to say The First, part 2. I sent you this. There is a scene in it where David Banner has the cure for the Hulk. He can take it right now, but if he takes it, it will knock him out for 2 to 3 days. And he needs to give it to the other guy, the evil guy, as I pointed Hector, the evil guy, so that he no longer becomes the Hulk. And that's my alarm going off. Lovin's going to have to wait till the podcast is done. So, but he needed to make sure that he gave that to the guy who was the evil Hulk. So David Banner couldn't take it himself. So he had to wait. So what ends up happening is the guy turns into the evil version of the Hulk, and the evil version of the Hulk picks up the antidote and he destroys it right in front of David Banner. And it was the only time in the history of the Incredible Hulk TV show where David Banner turned into the Hulk out of grief. Because it's a beautiful scene. He's touching the wall where the other Hulk threw the antidote and it exploded on the wall, and he's touching it like, this is my cure, this is what, this is what I've been searching for, and it's gone, and he starts crying from it. And there's so much pain and agony, and that's part of the reason, and we'll get into this, and let's put a pin in that point, because I want to talk about that for cinematic purposes. But it's such a beautiful moment, so he transforms into the Hulk, and I won't spoil it for if you want to see what happens when those two Hulks clash, but so the Incredible Hulk TV show, and there's one more 2-parter I would recommend, Prometheus. It is not a crappy alien prequel. It is a 2-part episode where an alien, well, not an alien, I guess, but like a meteor has crash landed on Earth, and it's causing certain cosmic rays to come off of it, and the Hulk gets around it, and he gets stuck in the middle of the transformation between Banner and the Hulk. And so they use a lot of Lou Ferrigno in just his regular skin. He's not painted green. And he's talking as Bixby. David Banner, as Bixby. And they would do a lot of little tricks where they would close up on Bixby's face, and but we're supposed to believe that it's Ferrigno's body. They did a couple little tricks like that. But he's somewhat Hulkish from the comics. He's very primitive in his talking. So that's a really good one too. So the TV series was beautiful. I felt the TV series was great because we got to see the ongoing pathos of this character, which is what makes him a wonderful character to follow weekly or monthly.
And you rooted for him.
You root for him. It's a different sell for a cinematic version of a character 2-hour movie.
Exactly. And that's why I said earlier, I think it might be the sort of best portrayal of the character because of those two reasons. Number one, just the character himself, Banner, is a guy that you root for. And they did such a good job of casting him and setting up his journey as one that you are on it with him.
And he's always helping people.
Always helping people, so he's heroic even though he's this monster. And I think number two is that the show was generally like beloved by people.
Yes.
I think it was very well received for its time. You cut
number
to,
one demographic of the Incredible Hulk.
What?
Adult women.
Adult women.
Number
Bixby,
two,
baby.
yeah, Bixby.
Bixby, baby.
Yeah. And if you want to have some fun, look up Incredible Hulk gag reel. Mm-hmm. Bixby's a little bit of a scoundrel.
He's a little Clooney-esque.
A little bit of a poon hound, that Bixby. Rest in peace, Bill Bixby. But yeah, Bixby was great, and he was very charming, just as a person, Bill Bixby. Yeah. And you get to see that a lot in the Incredible Hulk TV show. There are moments where he really gets to shine and play those moments. 4 years after, well, maybe not 4 years, I guess it was longer than that, 6 years after the last episode of The Incredible Hulk. It ran for 5 seasons, 82 episodes on CBS. They did not end the show properly, so there was no end. The last episode is just a typical episode. Lonely man, you know, sticking the thumb out.
Okay.
Then NBC bought the rights and brought the Incredible Hulk franchise over to NBC, and they did 3 TV movies. They did The Return of the Incredible Hulk, where they brought in Thor for the first time ever in live action, played by Eric Kramer.
Did that predate Adventures in Babysitting?
I have no idea.
We'll count it as the first. It was.
I think it predated.
I think you're right. And also, Vincent D'Onofrio in Adventures in Babysitting, not technically Thor, but still, it's okay. Keep going.
Yes.
Great.
Then, the Trial of the Incredible Hulk, where they brought in Matt Murdock.
Daredevil.
A decked out in all black Daredevil, by the way.
Just like season 1.
I mean, when I first saw Daredevil, when they were showing the teasers for it, I was like, oh my God, it's Rex Smith as Daredevil. It wasn't Rex Smith. But it was almost the exact same look that they did from the Trial of the Incredible Hulk. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. Trial of the Incredible Hulk, by the way, a little note for you guys out there. It's the first live-action appearance in any Marvel property by Stan Lee.
As in a cameo. That's
he
great.
Played the foreman in the trial. So that was the first time that he did it. I'm sure he was like, this is fun! And then he's doing it forever ever since. And then they did a final movie, which was called The Death of the Incredible Hulk, where, spoilers, he dies at the end.
Yeah.
And they actually had a character that was basically Black Widow.
Yeah.
It's Black Widow.
Okay.
But they don't call her Black Widow.
Okay.
But she's basically Black Widow. So he dies at the end. That was actually not the final movie. Mm-hmm. They had it never went into pre-production, but they had plans for the Revenge of the Incredible Hulk, where Banner would actually have the Hulk's intelligence. Ooh. I mean, I'm sorry. Well, that's not good. No, the Hulk would have Banner's intelligence.
Very cool.
But then shortly thereafter, Bixby got diagnosed with cancer, he got sick, and then he passed away. A lot of people look at it like that movie didn't get made because Bixby got sick. Yeah. The Death of the Incredible Hulk did not do great numbers, viewer-wise. I think because people were like, I don't want to see that. Yeah. I don't want to see the Hulk die. And so the numbers weren't good enough for NBC to greenlit The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk. But had they done it, that's where they were going to go with it. And that would have been interesting. I would have loved to have seen that kind of journey for Bixby, but
I think it's really interesting. I think by the late '80s and then getting into the early '90s, I think,
and now we're done with the TV show.
We shifted, coming from the TV show, shifted from having superheroes on the small screen to the big screen. I think that Batman '89 ushered in like the let's focus on movies now. And so I don't know if an early '90s, Revenge of the Incredible Hulk would have.
It had just been a TV movie.
It had been a TV movie. And in the 70s, it was like, that's what it was perfect for. Yeah. And you get to all those years later, and I think it would have been a little bit different. So we get to now cinematic Hulk. Are we there yet?
We're there.
He's been in cartoons. He's had a couple of video games. Let's touch on video games. My favorite might have been the game based off of the Edward Norton movie, The Incredible Hulk, where it was just like an open world thing and you would run around and smash buildings.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty fun.
Pretty good for that.
Yeah. What's the plot of that?
I don't remember. You just run around and you smash buildings, and you can pick up car gloves and you do that whole thing. So
car gloves.
We get to the movies. The rights are at Universal. Marvel Comics to get out of bankruptcy in the late 90s.
Also coming off the heels of Spider-Man.
Absolutely.
The year before.
But they sold the rights to all their big characters to different studios. Fox
To
had
survive.
the X-Men to survive, to come back from bankruptcy.
It's unbelievable.
Sony had Spider-Man and Universal had the Hulk. So Universal, of course, went into production on it. They got Ang Lee to direct it. And this movie
From
came out...
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Off of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and before Brokeback Mountain,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah, before
Brokeback.
Yeah. This movie had a lukewarm or mixed response, and I think it's a very interesting film when it came out. I think it made okay money, but it was just because like the Hulk, and it was coming off of...
It was okay. It had a great, not great. It had a really strong opening weekend,
Yes.
second week,
because
major
the
drop.
marketing was pretty there. Like the marketing
Marketing
did a good
wasn't
job.
bad.
Marketing wasn't bad.
It was very Hulk smash marketing.
Hulk smash marketing. And again, the year before, the first Spider-Man movie came out, and that was to me, the signal of superhero movies are back.
Yeah.
It's the new golden age of superhero movies. You can say that it was the first X-Men, but X-Men in 2000 was more sci-fi.
Yes.
Spider-Man was comic booky and colorful. Hulk, all of the marketing was it's green, it's Hulk, it's green. You know, Danny Elfman did the score again, just like Spider-Man, which is a great score.
Yeah, it's a good score.
It's really like haunting and melodic, and I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like this movie. I like it. I love parts of it. I own it on Blu-ray. I haven't seen it in a while. It's not as fresh in my head as I'd like it to be. But I remember when it came out, Rich, that
If I was not locked down by my mic, I would go sit.
You'd go sit
back
over there?
Yeah.
I remember that I compared it to how people responded to Batman Begins, which came out 2 years later in 2005. I think that
Really?
Hulk in 2003 was a little bit ahead of its time, and it was the wrong character to do what it did. But what it did, I don't think was necessarily
Oh, I see what you're
a
saying.
wrong approach. Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? That people complained when Hulk came out. It's 40 minutes until we see the superhero Hulk.
Hulk dogs.
It's two in your head.
Yeah.
It has villains and stuff I don't care about. Hulk dogs is dumb.
Yeah.
All that stuff before we get to the fun stuff. Like Ang Lee, he's too much of an art house director, and he tried too much to go into the psychology of this
Yes.
character. You look at Batman Begins in 2005, you don't see Batman until 40 minutes in. It has villains that you kind of don't care about. I mean, like Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, they're fine, but they're not like A level. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that it was an ambitious movie, and I think it was ahead of its time to do a sort of a deconstruction of the super. It used comic book panels to.
Which
not
I like.
Great effect, but it was something. It was
he got it
trying.
Ang Lee got a lot of credit for doing that, and
Yeah.
24 had been doing it for 2 seasons before. So it was a little like. Now, the one thing I would say about that, okay, so Batman Begins, I love Batman Begins.
Sure.
Okay, I think the reason that you can patiently wait for Batman to show up in Batman Begins is because that character is done right.
Okay.
The problem
Bruce
with
Wayne? All right.
Hulk for me
Ang Lee's Hulk.
goes right to the teaser trailer. Teaser trailer is Eric Bana standing in front of a bathroom mirror, shaking, which that could be anything. But
I remember that, yeah.
but he's saying, when it comes over me, when I totally lose control, I like it. And when I first saw that, I was like, that is not the Hulk. It's the Hulk,
it's not Bruce
but
Banner.
that is not Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
And I had a big problem with that. So much to the point that when they introduced the character in the movie, he's not even Bruce Banner. He is Bruce Krenzler because he doesn't even know that he is a Banner. And I mean, it took so long to even get to that point, to realize that, oh, he's adopted. Oh, his father was an abusive prick that hurt his mother and hurt him.
Murdered his mother.
Exactly. And it just... It didn't do good service to Bruce Banner. Eric Bana played a very, I think age-wise he was right. I think look-wise he was fine. But there wasn't that concern for humanity, trying to do good, that kind of thing about Bruce Banner. I feel like if that movie had that, we would have been a lot more forgiving. We still would have raised our eyebrows at Hulk dogs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Absorbing Man, being his dad and things like that. But I feel like if Bruce Banner had been done right in that movie, then I think it's a different movie. I think it comes off differently. Let me ask you a quick question, and this goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about with Peter David's run. I did not like that the idea is something else inside him also contributed to him becoming the Hulk, because I feel like the story of
Other
the Hulk...
than just the accident of him getting...
Yes, because I truly believe, at my core, what I believe the story of the Hulk and Bruce Banner to be is, here's a guy who is trying to do right by the world and something terrible happens to him. And then this is his reaction to that. Not other things was going on in his body, not his father raised him a certain way.
Not he's always destined to be the Hulk.
Exactly.
It's the same thing that a lot of people feel with Spider-Man. A lot of people feel that Peter Parker is the everyman who was always a good person.
Yes.
And trying to do the
There,
right thing.
but for the grace of God, go you or I.
And then something happens to him, and then he uses that curse or gift to keep going.
Exactly, and that's what I didn't care for with
Yeah.
this. I just felt like it muddied the waters. Like, you have a heroic Bruce Banner. He risks his life to save someone else's life, and then this terrible thing happens to him that he has to try to understand or control or what have you. And so the movie kind of lost me on that. The aspect of, we actually didn't get a lot of angst on Bruce Banner's part, worried about hurting other people, that kind of thing. I think that would have gone
a little bit, just mostly about Betty, played by
Jennifer Connelly, who is a wonderful. We should talk really quickly. It's an amazing cast.
It's a really great cast. Josh Lucas as Glenn Talbot was really interesting.
Nick Nolte in between arrests. He showed up.
He was insane.
Yeah,
but he was very memorable. Seeing it in theaters when he said, "Your name is Banner." In that scene, there was a little kid in the theater.
You go, I will go. Yeah,
there's a little kid in the theater that just kept going, "Banner, Banner, Banner."
Oh no!
When he said that, because of anyway. So I remember that.
So Ang Lee's Hulk comes out. Mm-hmm. There were rumblings, and by the way, a very nice coda at the end of that movie, hearkening back to the TV show with the great line. You're making me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Great
Spanish,
line, by the
right?
way. Yeah, in Spanish. So then there were not really a lot of rumblings about a sequel because the movie did not perform how Marvel and Universal had hoped. Mm-hmm. So then, a few years later, Marvel decided that they were going to do their own movies, which we obviously now know as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which off-screen, Hector and I were talking about, Hector doesn't care for. He doesn't care for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's my favorite. Okay.
It's really weird, awkward that even came up. I'm totally kidding. You can email me. No. So they start with Iron Man, and then they come out with the Incredible Hulk. And to play the Incredible Hulk, they get
Edward Norton.
Which was amazing.
He's a movie star. What a get. And we've said this before, too, that the lukewarm response with the first
You guys should have been here before. We said so many great things before. Oh my God, Del Taco was amazing.
In 2003, that movie, I think, kind of proved that audiences wanted an action movie.
Yes.
With the Hulk, which is like, I get it, but that's not all that character
well,
is.
Well, Feige had a big Hulk is hero.
Hulk is hero.
Mantra.
Yeah. That happened in The Incredible Hulk. It was definitely more of an action movie. He hulks out 3.5 times in the film. There's 3.5 Hulk outs of that. And it's so tough to do this character in movies because you're rooting for the thing to happen so he can turn into the Hulk, and that's what the main character is rooting against.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to feel for Bruce. And you can do that in the show.
You can do it in the show
because
you go on the journey with him. Mm-hmm. So you are a part of the day-to-day or week-to-week or, if you're reading the comics month to month. Mm-hmm. That becomes a part of the struggle, and you're on board with that. When it's a 2-hour movie and you want to see him break shit, it is a tougher sell. And we as an audience, I think the Marvel executives, look how popular Hulk was in the Avengers.
Because he's just an action hero.
Oh my God, but coming out of the Avengers, like, everyone loved him and everybody was like, oh, well, they did Hulk right. Well, also part of that is Hulk's not in a lot of it.
Yeah.
Banner's not in a lot of it. He's just a cog in the machine. He's one of many. Now, I would love a Hulk solo movie, and we can get into Ragnarok in a second.
Ruffalo.
But it's tough. It's a really tough thing. Now, I think you're right. I think going the route of the Indestructible Hulk would probably be a great way to go. We'll get into that in a second because we're going to talk about moving forward. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about the Incredible Hulk because I think there are so many wonderful things in the Incredible Hulk that I like. I don't think that it did as well as Marvel would have hoped, mainly because it had a lot of stank from Ang Lee's Hulk. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people looked at that like, what is this, a sequel?
A little bit of the behind-the-scenes friction that people heard about Edward Norton not being so great to work with, and then the movie comes out, and it's not...
he went to go help people, find water in Africa.
Yeah.
Which, come on. Okay, I'm totally kidding. That's a wonderful thing to go and do. But if you want a bulletproof reason to not be making public appearances, that was really smart on his part.
Yeah.
Really. I see what you're doing, Ed. I see it.
It was great.
But I'm still happy for all those people in Africa.
Cinematically and in media, this is my favorite Hulk so far.
Really? The spindly, like the CGI is not on point.
It's not the best.
It's spotty.
It's spotty.
Like the stuff at night when he first appears in that factory, oh God, it's great.
Yeah.
But his first appearance outside... When he lands and growls with the big green eyes.
When we're far away from Culver University, when we're far away shots and he's running next to a Jeep and he throws
when you squint and stuff like that, it's awesome.
Yeah. I think that the CG, the special effects in 2003 Hulk was more groundbreaking for that year than
In
the
some ways,
08,
yeah. The stuff in the
5 years
desert
later.
is wonderful.
Yeah, there's good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's my favorite. I watched that movie and I think this is comic book Hulk as close as we've
08.
gotten so far.
08.
08.
Yeah.
08. Incredible Hulk. This is comic book Hulk. This is the story. This is Mr. Green and Mr. Blue. This is Bruce Banner being
Samuel
more,
Stearns,
Samuel
Betty
Stearns,
Ross,
the leader.
yeah.
Great cast. General Ross, played by this time William Hurt, I thought did a fantastic job.
The
Fantastic
guy
job.
in the pizza shop in The Incredible Hulk,
Yes.
who was the owner of the pizza shop, he was the voice of Bruce Banner in the 1966 cartoon. So I love the fact that they just did that little pullback.
Good Ferrigno cameo. Great Bill
Totally.
Bixby reference in the beginning.
Stan Lee, wow.
Yeah, wow. My favorite Stanley cameo, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's so many things I love about this movie. I think that it's also
Tim Roth.
Tim Roth is so great.
Yeah.
And they need to bring all this stuff
I
back.
totally feel like when I was watching Captain America: Civil War,
Yeah.
I didn't believe it, but there was a small part where I'm like, if Tim Roth is in one of those cells, I am going to go crazy.
I know. That would have
I
been
did not
awesome.
go crazy. I had to just do it during the airport scene.
In many ways, 2 months after the first Iron Man movie came out,
Yeah.
in many ways, it's more of a Marvel Comics movie than Iron Man is. It's full of
yeah.
references to the
Oh,
universe.
totally.
It's the things that Edward Norton himself, being a comic book fan and reader and aficionado, put in there about like the super soldier serum and all this stuff.
Yeah.
He put that stuff in there. The problem is that my favorite comparison is in Iron Man 1, you've got Robert Downey Jr. hooking up with Brown, the reporter who was calling him a merchant of death.
Oh yeah,
Like having sex with her.
Leslie Beebe.
Leslie Beebe, one night stand, and you're like, wow, this Tony Stark character is so much fun. Then you get to Edward Norton about to hook up with Betty Ross, played by Liv Tyler,
Yeah.
and he stops himself because he can't get too excited.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking because they love each other, and she's like, not even a little excited,
even a
and
little
they can't.
excited?
And that to me is the perfect description between those two characters.
Yeah.
One of them is going to be more fun to watch, but the other one was also done justice. That's right on the money. So
Yeah, totally.
It didn't surprise me. Those two movies came out and people were more like, Iron Man's better. Iron Man's my favorite. Of course, Bruce Banner should kind of be nobody's favorite.
Yeah.
When you
in some
compare
ways.
him to other characters.
He's a wet blanket
He's
in a
the
lot
wet
of ways,
blanket.
yeah.
And for that reason, I love that movie. And each time I watch it, I find more to like in it.
Yeah.
And kind of find more to forgive in terms of special effects and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, Ed Norton was quoted as saying they really imagined this as a number one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they had Doc Samson in
They
there.
set up so much stuff.
I mean, they had a lot of stuff. I mean, you've got Tim Blake Nelson's head starting to, pop.
To become the leader.
Yeah. At the end of that movie. I mean, it was a really, it was a really great reprieve from Ang Lee's Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it very much.
Why do you think it didn't hit as hard as it could have? For those reasons, it's just the stank.
I think the stank. I really do. I think it was 5 years after, and we're getting quicker and quicker reboots now.
Yeah.
I think for then it was a little bit of a quick reboot.
I absolutely think that after seeing Mark Ruffalo cast brilliantly, who brings a whole nother dimension closer to Bill Bixby, as Bruce
It's
Banner
interesting
in
because
the New
Norton
Avengers.
is like Comics Banner.
He's Comics Banner,
and
100%.
Ruffalo is Bixby Banner.
Because, like you said, he lets us in.
Yes, he lets you in emotionally. Whereas Ed Norton, you could totally believe that Ed Norton is a world-class physicist who is a little socially awkward, arrogant, but still a good person. So yeah, I mean that's the dichotomy of those two different guys. Actually, interestingly enough, Louis Leterrier, who directed The Incredible Hulk, his first choice was Mark Ruffalo.
Really?
He wanted to cast Mark Ruffalo, and I'm a continuity whore.
Yeah.
And I hate seeing. I mean, I don't like Rhodey being swapped out.
I know.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm happy with Don Cheadle. I just
great.
wish Don Cheadle had been there the entire time.
Nothing's been a downgrade. Everything's either been like an upgrade or a side grade.
Totally.
All of their recastings.
I don't
but
think
it
side grade is a word, but
it's
that's
a word.
okay.
I just created it,
All
but
right.
it is a bit of a bummer. But they're training us to do that now.
Yes.
So that later, when they recast Tony Stark, we're going to be like, well, they've been doing it since.
Yeah, we're in for a world of hurt.
2010.
So yeah, I mean Marvel was actually relatively happy with the success of The Incredible Hulk. It did very well on DVD.
Well, now that it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think that.
But boy,
adds
it
to
is the redheaded stepchild of the Marvel Cinematic
yeah.
Universe.
Oh,
a lot of people. That's why I was so happy to see Ross show up in Civil War.
Yes.
So great to see him show up.
And I'm glad that William Hurt, like, he likes those kinds of movies and he was game. He wanted to come back.
Yes.
You know, that's great to hear. It bums me out when you hear something like Hugo Weaving doesn't want to do Red Skull again. When you're like, your Red Skull was so good, though.
Yeah, it was a good Marvel
Captain
villain.
America,
Like, really liked
please.
him.
We need more good
Thanos
villains.
could totally pull you out.
So
like, that could totally happen.
So we got
Well, I should say, though, before we get to Avengers.
Yeah.
So post 2008 Hulk was a very interesting period because ABC went into pre-production on Guillermo del Toro doing an Incredible Hulk TV show.
Let me help you with that pronunciation. Guillermo del Toro.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
White. So white.
Doing a TV show that was supposed to be in the Marvel Universe, or maybe not.
Maybe.
We never found out.
Well, they're doing that now. They're doing a TV show that maybe is in the Marvel Universe or not. We don't know.
Is the Hulk now?
No, it's S.H.I.E.L.D.
It's S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, yeah, I know, right? That's such a bummer, right? Do they really care about their shows? But Guillermo was saying this is going to be very ambitious, and it's going to be.
I'm looking at you, Perlmutter.
It's
looking right at you.
It was supposed to be more like the '70s show.
Yes.
Which was really, it was ambitious, like Guillermo said. It's ambitious to even attempt that. People were like, "You're going to do CG? You're going to paint another guy? What are you going to do?"
I couldn't believe that they were doing it, and also it bummed me out because it made me feel like they were going to step away from the Hulk being a part of their cinematic universe.
Right.
Also, the final shot of the '08 Hulk is Ed Norton kind of smiling at the end when he's getting ready to turn into the Hulk. Now,
technically, the final shot is Tony Stark, but go on.
Wow, look at that. False advertising, by the way, for the marketing campaign for that movie.
But very smart.
Tony is in the last scene, but whatever.
Yeah.
But the director put that in there because he wanted there to be the possibility of, if there's a sequel, maybe Banner is starting to learn how to control the Hulk or maybe aim it. More what they were talking about, or he can be a villain in the Avengers movie, which really bummed me out when he said that because I was like, I don't want Hulk as a villain in the Avengers movie. I know he fights Avengers in the movie, but ultimately I want Hulk as hero.
I think Hulk as hero is great. I think that's a really smart move though, because that first issue of the comic book, he was a villain.
Yes,
because he was being manipulated by Loki, which is basically what the movie ended up doing.
Yeah, destroys the bridge or whatever.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, the Avengers was originally going to have Loki and the Red Skull.
Yes.
And then Joss Whedon saw Thor and he's like, oh, it can just be Tom Hiddleston. It's fine. It can just be Loki.
Well,
he can carry it.
And Joss had, what was it, Zach Penn?
Yeah.
Wrote The Incredible Hulk, and then Ed Norton came in and made a lot of changes, and they had that whole argument about the screenplay credit, which is what made Ed kind of pull away from the marketing campaign for The Incredible Hulk. But Zach Penn wrote The Avengers. Yep. And they asked Joss Whedon about his opinion about Zach Penn's script for The Avengers, and did you know what he said? He had this great quote. He goes, there was nothing wrong with Zach Penn's script. It was great. I just wasn't going to shoot a frame of it. And that's like, wow, that is shade.
That's awesome.
Like, that is some awesome shade.
Zach Penn also wrote X-Men The Last Stand.
Joss's original point stands.
Yeah.
There you go. So Joss came in, and Joss actually, in casting Ruffalo, he said that there was only one person that he wanted for
He said he had a short list,
Banner.
and at the top of that list was Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
Love that.
And he said that he and Ruffalo actually got together and they did a lot of work on the character because all the other characters he felt had been done right leading into the Avengers, and he felt like Hulk hadn't necessarily been nailed.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they worked out a lot of that I'm always angry. Like, they worked out what were the motivations behind someone who has this affliction. So I really liked what they did. Hulk was fantastic in the Avengers. I really thought
pure escapism.
Totally
had the best moment in the film when he smashes Loki.
Absolutely,
that just had the best reaction. The reaction was so good in the theater that I didn't even hear Hulk say his line or Loki do his little whimper until I got the movie on DVD. Because every time I went and saw the movie, it was just like crazy laughter, applause, and then you hear like puny God.
Where were you seeing the movie?
Where was I seeing the movie?
Yeah, where were you seeing the movie?
2012, Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. Because I was in Sherman Oaks, very polite audiences. I could hear a puny God. They were laughing, but it was it's a Sherman Oaks audience.
It's awesome. And another thing that I love about Banner as a little accident that Joss Whedon that they stumbled across when they were filming the movie is the scene where Bruce is hiding out in India and the Black Widow goes to recruit him. And just
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Because of the set, they had a cradle on the set. Yeah. And there was a line in the script saying, well, we don't always get the thing that we want, something to that effect.
No, he said, I don't always get what I want.
I think he said
I don't always get. Don't do this. You're going to embarrass yourself.
Is it I don't always get what I want?
Yeah.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
He starts touching the cradle And they
And he says,
created
"I
that.
don't always get what I want."
Yeah, it was. They created it that day because of what the set was, and I thought that was such a brilliant.
And Joss
thing.
and Joss told Mark, said, "Why don't you just give that a little push?"
As you say it, it's so
Great.
It's so great.
Awesome. And it ends up becoming interesting because of where Joss ended up taking those two characters.
In Age of Ultron.
And they have that exact same conversation. You know, I can't have they're in the kids' room, and he's like, I can't have all this.
Yeah.
You know, kids and stuff like that. So, loved Hulk and Avengers, was really surprised, quite frankly, that he did not get a sequel from there. And there have been issues with Universal's.
You learn later. That's why that Marvel just doesn't want to share profits. Marvel, just share some profits. Just please, I'm asking you. We're Hulk fans. Just share some profits. Make a bunch of money. If they made a solo Hulk movie now, it would easily be their highest-grossing solo Hulk movie.
Oh,
easily.
They would double the last two.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because the last two made like $270 each.
Yeah, it would double.
I mean, come on.
It would easily make $800 million. Like
especially if he
Mark
went to go
Ruffalo.
visit his cousin Jennifer,
In
which
Los
I know
Angeles.
you're all about.
That's what I'm all about. But back to Avengers: Age of Ultron. Joss Whedon focused more on Banner and Natasha in that film, and a little bit more of Hawkeye, and a little bit more of Scarlet Witch
Jeremy Renner
and Vision,
was pissed
because on top of Hawkeye getting the short end of the stick in the first Avengers movie, those characters that I just mentioned,
the short end of the Loki stick,
they don't get their own solo movies. So even though Cap had a great little story, Iron Man had a great story, Thor did not really anything, in Avengers: Age of Ultron, Whedon did decide purposely, I'm going to focus on Banner and Natasha. And I thought a romance that people were saying came from nowhere, I thought that some of those seeds were planted. And I thought that when you, in my opinion, when you watch these movies, you know that they go on adventures in the years in between that we see them.
Totally.
So I understood it, and I was interested in the direction.
And these are the two, when he's not hulked out, these are two non-superpower characters. Hawkeye is married. So these are two non-superpower characters who would, when they're flying back in the Quinjet, they would talk or bond or whatever. Yeah.
And
so I was okay with it. It threw me. I was a little disappointed that, that probably is the death knell for the Betty Ross character in this universe. Who knows? We might see her. I know you say that. I know you say that. But I was okay with it. I was okay with it. I mean, we talked about it, and we're not going to get into it because people know our opinions on it probably, especially if you watched Superhero News' amazing Marvel movie marathon, which I popped in for like 4 of them and then had to get IVs. I mean, it was crazy. But all the talk about, is Natasha a monster just because she can't have children? That's not what the movie was saying. The movie was saying because she's a killer and is killing people with impunity, with a bag over their head. With just a gun, not with a Batmobile, but with a gun, she's killing people.
So I thought that Joss found ways that made sense for these two characters to connect in that way. Yeah, I really did buy it.
Yeah, and I was okay with it.
And
do you know there's no Hulk transformations in the movie?
Really?
They all happen off screen.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Because when
he hulks down,
but when Scarlet Witch says, "I want the big one," the next time, no, Scarlet Witch. When Scarlet Witch says, "I want the big one,"
we see Hulk.
We cut away, and then we come back, and he's already the Hulk, and he's got the eyes, and he's possessed.
You're right.
She pushes him down, and he just
jumps back up.
Yeah, he jumps back up as Hulk. So no transformations in it, which was interesting.
That's okay.
Because I thought the transformations in the Avengers was amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool.
But let's talk about how Age of Ultron ends up.
Yeah.
And Hector, where is Hulk now?
The Hulk is he's in the hands of Marvel Studios.
Is that him right
That's
now?
him
The
right
plane
now.
that you
He
hear?
didn't go to space. The Quinjet crashed somewhere. No, it crashed somewhere, and he can't. S.H.I.E.L.D. can't track it. So he's back in his Bill Bixby
he's somewhere,
days. He's the fugitive.
and he's apparently calm.
Because
we're not noticing anything.
We haven't noticed anything.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen the next time it's been confirmed we're going to see the Hulk is going to be in the Thor sequel, Thor Ragnarok, Thor 3.
What?
Which is crazy. They're going to make it into a buddy comedy. This is the movie that I am most interested in for their next slate of films because the Thor movies...
You're most excited for Spider-Man Homecoming.
I am.
You're most interested in this.
Oh, I am so going to... they just announced a lot of the cast. Like, all of the decisions that we're hearing about this Thor movie is going to be nuts. It's a completely different director.
It's unbelievable.
It's a comedic director, Taika Waititi.
I think Chris Hemsworth is still making sure he's in it.
Yes,
because all the talk is about everybody else.
It's about everybody else. It's about... oh, my God.
I mean, just go through it. I mean, you got Kate Blanchett as Hela.
Jeff Goldblum. Kate Blanchett as Hela, who is Loki's daughter, but Hela, which is insane.
Okay, so Goldblum, who is going to be the Grandmaster, who is where is he from?
He's one of the elders of the universe. He's actually the
he's
collector's.
He's in the
Hulk comic.
Oh, the comics.
That's right. He's
in the comics. He's what?
I see what you're trying.
Yeah.
In the comics,
I try, guys.
In the comics, take a shot. He is one of the elders of the universe, the older brother of the Collector, played by Benicio del Toro in the movie. When you got very excited.
I love the way you said that.
Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah. So that's going to be nuts. He's a cosmic gamesman who shuffles things around on a little chessboard.
Yeah, he was in the Contest of Champions long ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Basically, any huge cosmic thing, he shows up.
Okay.
Whenever he dies, it's like, oh, it's a big deal. He just died. So that movie's just going to be insane. But
how is Hulk coming into that story?
they might be taking elements of Planet Hulk.
Oh, they've already announced that. That was this week.
They're pulling from that,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a segment where Thor goes off of Asgard, off-world somewhere, into a gladiatorial arena, and then the Hulk comes out. And I think it's going to make sense because it's either going to be Hela or Loki or somebody pulling the strings that goes and kidnaps Hulk from Earth. Which isn't the craziest thing to think about now because
No.
Again, you watch The Incredible Hulk in 2008 and they're like, there's no aliens in this universe yet. There's no, everything's relatively grounded.
Yeah,
they're trying to make it
unbelievable.
science fiction.
Yeah.
Then we see Thor and people can come down on little rainbow transports.
Yeah.
So, sure, he
Okay.
gets kidnapped
So you think Banner is on Earth?
and is
Okay.
now at some point between now
Okay.
and when Thor Ragnarok comes out next year.
Okay.
He's going to get kidnapped by space aliens.
So I'm
Yeah.
saying it here.
Let's say
Okay.
it.
Post-credit scene from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Which comes out next year, May.
Yes, next year May, and we will be a good just 6 months shy of the Hulk. The Hulk. Look at
Thor.
that. Sorry.
Thor Ragnarok.
Sorry.
What's your post-credit
Thor
scene for
Ragnarok.
Guardians 2?
Post-credit scene, Guardians 2. It's a desolate planet. A ship lands, and we see Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster getting out of the ship with an underling or something, and the underling, like an Igor type character, will be asking him why they've come to this planet. And Goldblum will be, oh well, I'm looking for something.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something, and they will come across the wreckage of a Quinjet-looking type ship.
Okay.
And they will be talking about the Grandmaster will notice that this ship just landed. He wants to find out, and it shows that there's signs of life. And he will go, and they will pry open the top, and the top will open, and we will be seeing it from inside the Quinjet out onto Goldblum and the lackey. And Goldblum, as the Grandmaster, will say, "Oh my God, look at it! It's hideous. It's disgusting." And the little lackey will be like, "What kind of creature is this?" And then Goldblum will say something, "Do you have a name?" And we'll flip, and it'll be Ruffalo, shirtless, Bruce.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Cut to black.
That's great.
And then we will see him later
As-
in the Grandmaster's games.
Absolutely.
That's my prediction.
That's pretty good.
That's how I'm guessing. If the whole idea is that the Quinjet kind of veered off and went off into
Yeah.
space, because
Yeah.
Joss left it open-ended to where that could be the case.
That'd be a great moment.
By the way, I think we disagree on something that I know about you. You believe Hulk made the choice to leave in Avengers: Age of Ultron. I disagree.
You think it was Banner that made the choice?
No, I don't think anybody made the choice.
Oh, that's what you think. He was waiting for Black Widow to come back.
And
That's
now the
right.
interesting thing is that's an opinion I've heard you make. I'm saying I don't believe he made that choice. Joss Whedon, who wrote and directed the movie, said Hulk made that choice. So I'm really fighting a losing battle here. But the way I interpreted it, because they've done it 2 times in the movie already, putting the hand up, right,
then the
that kind
finger.
of thing. Right. So they've done that twice already. This was the 3rd time, and she's talking to him, and he goes to talk to the screen, and he accidentally wipes her away. That's how I read it. Now, Joss has said that Hulk makes the decision that he's got to leave, and it just did not play to me like that.
Sure.
But that's okay. I buy it. I think it's going to be really interesting what they do with Hulk and Ragnarok. Now, the interesting thing about the cinematic universe, they still have not gone the route of a semi-intelligent talking
Not yet.
Hulk smash Hulk. He
Not
said
yet.
Hulk smash in the '08 Hulk, and he said Betty.
Yep.
And then in the Avengers, he said Puny God.
Puny God.
He said nothing
In Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron. Although Ruffalo teased, he was like, "Oh, I got a couple of lines in this one, and they never made the movie, and I don't know what they were." But in Ragnarok, it has been confirmed that
He's going to talk a little bit.
because the director has talked about that, and they're going to bring in elements of that.
Interesting.
I'm really curious how they're going to do that. I've always been a big fan, whether it be in live action or reading it in the comics, or hoping it's more for you. But in the cinematic universe, I would love to find a way that we can actually have Hulk talk, but it not be something that breaks our believability from watching this world.
Sure,
I mean, we just saw a raccoon talk.
Yeah.
I think we can have it, but I'd be really curious.
That'd be interesting. In the comics, in Planet Hulk, he is intelligent and he finds a wife. He leads a revolution and takes over this like dictatorship style planet.
Because he's been sent away by the Illuminati.
The Illuminati, who deemed him too dangerous, which is brilliant. Right before the Civil War, which is why he's not there.
Right.
And it's cool that he's not in the Civil War movie either. Great little line too. It's like, we could really use a Hulk right now. Any idea where he is? And she's like, you really think he'd be on our side?
Yeah. It's a good one.
In the comics, he was intelligent. He took a wife named Kyera, I believe, and then had a son, or she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And he goes, he starts living a life, and this is the entire time it's Hulk that's doing this. Right. And I like the idea that if Banner allows the Hulk to stay out longer,
like you just take over,
kind of takes over and starts to become more intelligent, starts talking and starts having conversations. That would be interesting to me if we meet him on a gladiatorial planet. Thor meets him, he's like, Hulk, brother Hulk, what are you doing here? And he's like, I've been here weeks, or something like, been here weeks. And he's like, whoa, you're talking now, like, because Banner's just like given up.
Well, that's a good point.
I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
And then in the comics, a bomb goes off. It was accidentally detonated by somebody that was trying to kill Hulk. It was like an atomic bomb. Kills everybody, including Hulk's wife, and he thinks his child, but the child lives on and becomes Scar.
And he blames the Illuminati for it.
So that's what
Comes
sets off
to Earth.
World War Hulk, is this, because it was on his ship that he was sent there as sort of like a last measure of like, maybe we'll just have to blow him up.
Right.
And he comes to Earth and just wrecks house. And it was okay. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously they're going to do Ragnarok. The last bit of Ragnarok is probably Thanos coming to Asgard and wrecking shit.
Maybe
at the very, very end. Maybe it's some deal with Hela. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I mean, Ragnarok is the last thing before Infinity War. Now, Ruffalo has said when you combine Ragnarok and the Infinity War storylines and what's going to be happening with Hulk's character, he said those three movies combined can be considered a Hulk solo movie. It's interesting talk. I'll be curious to see how that plays itself out. I'm sure they'll use some elements of World War Hulk in Infinity Wars, obviously when he and Thor have to come to Earth, because I guess I haven't really given it much thought, but I don't necessarily see Hulk leaving Thor at the end of Thor Ragnarok.
Hulk's not leaving Thor.
Yeah, I feel like Ragnarok probably ends with the two of them in a compromised position. It's probably not a happy ending. I mean, it's Ragnarok, so but I would imagine the two of them coming to Earth or being pulled into whatever is happening on Earth with the Infinity War, or probably the Infinity Gauntlet is what they'll call the first one, and then the second one will be Infinity War. We'll see. I'm sure they'll probably use some elements of World War Hulk, not in terms of him being upset at anyone on Earth, but just in terms of probably some of the battle armor that he wore, probably use some of the same stuff to come back to Earth and fight Thanos.
Yeah.
We'll see, but I think moving forward, if they end up doing a solo movie like you've talked about, I do think the Indestructible Hulk is a good way to go. It'd be nice to see Banner kind of embrace it.
It's
because of all the challenges that we've talked about.
It's just a trick. I say do this, Marvel, because it's a easy way to market a fun Hulk movie and tricking audiences into thinking this is what you guys wanted, right? You wanted like the Indestructible Hulk, and then you do this movie, but actually get into the psychology of Bruce Banner. You let him be the bullet that is being fired by S.H.I.E.L.D. You have Kobe Smulders as Maria Hill. You introduce his cousin Jennifer Walters.
Yeah, you're big on that.
Maybe the bullet is being pointed at Samuel Stearns, who escapes S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Because he's not in Ross's custody, he's in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, the leader.
Good
and
point.
maybe the leader starting some stuff.
Or maybe Hydra's, actually.
Maybe it could be Hydra. Yeah, Hydra's had him maybe since the whole time. And I would love to see the Abomination come back. I'd also love to see the Abomination come back and the Masters of Evil, led by Baron Zemo. I want to see that happen because we've got Tim Roth.
That's true.
We've got Zemo now.
And a pretty decent introduction for a Zemo character.
Absolutely. But he's still not
appreciate him more and more.
He's not in the comics, Zemo, where he needs the purple mask and stuff. Yeah. And we can bring back Abomination, who could look even cooler now, maybe a little bit more Tim Roth-like. And just update the technology. But I want to see a solo Hulk movie with Mark Ruffalo. I think he deserves it. I think we've earned it as an audience. and I want to see an introduction to She-Hulk, because she is a character who can live past longer than when we need to retire Ruffalo.
I could
You know what
see
I'm saying?
I could see a
She-Hulk
Netflix
is-
series.
She-Hulk's
Interestingly
an
enough,
Avenger. That would be
I'd like
cool.
to see her in the movies though.
If they had a budget,
yeah.
if they had a budget to do She-Hulk with like size-changing technology, like Hobbit technology,
Yeah.
in a Netflix show,
interesting.
go
Yeah.
for it. Because I don't want to. I would like to. I kind of want to see a painted actor or actress more than a CG one.
Yeah.
A CG actress, you're going to lose me.
Yeah.
CG Monster Hulk, I can buy it a little bit more, but don't CG an actress because then it's just too uncanny valley. So you're going to have to paint one. You have
I
to
agree
paint
with
one,
that.
which sucks. But Zoe Saldana did it, and so did Mystique.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
We love The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
There have been some wonderful movies in the Marvel Cinematic world. You know, we just got Captain America, one of the greatest comic book trilogies of all time
Really
that you
good.
will ever see.
Yeah.
You know, we've had 3 Iron Man movies. Among
Pretty good.
Among all of them, yeah, great elements to all of them. You know, and we've had a Thor movie that I really liked, and then The Dark World, not so much. But Ragnarok is shaping up to be amazing.
Very interesting.
And just talk about all these characters. I think Hulk is a lot more than just guy gets mad, turns green,
Me too.
and breaks shit. So Hector and I wanted to get together and just kind of share a few of our thoughts on this. But obviously, what's important is what you guys think. So go ahead and post your comments below. What's your favorite Hulk run? What would you like to see them do with Hulk? Is Hulk on Earth or is he in space? You decide. Let us know and just kind of, and where can people keep in touch with you? First off, shut up. I'm going to plug you
Great.
myself.
Great.
Which
Plug it.
sounds dirty, but
Plug away.
I'm not going to. You guys really should follow Hector and Augustine and Adam. Couldn't get an A name? Couldn't get an A name?
Nah.
Okay. So Hector, Augustine, and Adam, or as I call them, on Superhero News. And give them all the info, where they can follow you, where they can follow Superhero News, Geek and Sundry, all that.
You can go to youtube.com/superhero news. You can follow Superhero News on all forms of social media. You can check out Geek and Sundry shows 5 days a week on twitch.tv/Geek and Sundry. I'm there most of the time. And then you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter @HectorIsFunny. And I tend to mostly just post stuff about comic books and movies and stuff.
Yeah,
That's how I usually do.
And I'm available on Twitter @TheRichFinley. You can also go to my website, richfinley.com. And that's about it. So just hit us up if you want to talk Hulk or She-Hulk. Angie Harmon is really pulling for it.
She-Hulk?
I don't think it's going to happen.
My dad would love
But
that.
she's one. I would love that.
dad would love that. I would love it too.
I'm about your dad's age. So anyway,
I learned so much, man. Thank you so much for having me. This made me want to go back and
been a
rewatch
blast.
the Hulk show so much.
it's so great.
What a gem.
I will annoyingly be sending you video links like crazy. I will put some links in too, by the way, to a few episodes from the Hulk.
Great.
That you can check out. I'll definitely put the first and Prometheus and different things like that. So yeah, just shoot us a line. Tell us what you guys think and what you would like to see happen with Hulk. Take care.